and Kim Elliot are here with us, and we have a lot to talk about. Also, Glenn and Sherry are here. They've been joining us in the first half hour. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're watching from, and good morning to you, Gary and Kim.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, so we have loved having you here at Sanctuary, and you have just fit right in really fast and become instant friends, and we love having you a part of this fellowship. But I think there's a lot of things about you that people aren't aware of that we want them to know. So we want to talk about those things today. And let me just say that this book, your newest book, is fantastic.
Thank you.
Violet
Thanks.
in the Snow. And it's kind of your story about meeting each other and kind of your love story. It reads really well, very exciting. You don't leave anything to the imagination. You go into a lot of depth in the relationship. And Glenn and Sherry will be waiting for your book out. Yeah. So this isn't your first one. There we go. You have other books that you've written as well, and so let's jump in and let's talk about the books. Let's talk about your life, and let's talk about the beginnings of your relationship together. You guys have a great story, and I know you're used to telling it.
Yeah.
So I'll just ask you to jump in and tell us your story.
Well, I guess from the beginning, actually, Gary and I, long before we knew each other, we had committed to follow God into love and romance, the relationship that He had planned for us.
Mm.
And I personally had had a experience of a sexual violation that had happened. I became pregnant and actually chose life. And then I chose to raise my daughter as a single parent. So it was at that point, for me, it was crucial that I steward my daughter's innocence well. And I did not have any interest on a revolving door of dudes coming in and out and trying them on to see who would fit. My mother had actually been praying for us that God would give me a husband. And He did speak to her as she was praying, and He said that there will be a man who hears my voice. So I not only had a commitment to trust God, but I also had a promise that He would fulfill that. And so that's how things got started for me. You might want to talk about your early experiences.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so at the very beginning, you weren't really looking for anyone, although your mom had suggested it, but you had decided that you could be single and be okay. Is that correct?
Yeah, but for like 3 weeks.
No, maybe not so much.
I
Yeah.
know he certainly did not clue me in that it would be a couple of decades. So yeah. So I wasn't looking for just anybody. I was looking for the one.
Yes. And were you at that same place, Gary? Were you at a place where you felt like you needed a wife, or did you feel like you were comfortable where you were at? Tell us about that.
Well, my early days were full of dating. I dated a lot and when I was probably in my early 20s, but just for a short season. Um, the whole thing frustrated me because it never really got me what I wanted, what I needed. So bit by bit, I came to the realization that there's got to be more to this than just chase someone and it not work and then try it again and then try it again. Eventually, God whispered to me and He says, "Why are you trying to find for yourself what I want to give you?"
Wow.
And I realized then, and that threw me into the scriptures, and I started to dig to find out how do you actually do this. And so that the main thing that came away that I took from that was that love was always meant to be a gift. It was never meant to be something that I had to find myself. I had to search for, to struggle, and have broken hearts and try it again, try it again, try it again. He said, I want to do this. Just like Adam, he did the same thing for Adam when he set the stage, and he gave Adam a wife. He made someone that fit him specifically. That's the principle that follows through all the scriptures. When God does this, he says, I will bring someone to you that's fitting for you. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And, I think we live in a culture where we feel like we have to go out and find somebody. And the places that we look are sometimes the worst places to find the kind of quality person that God would like to give us. We go to the pubs and the bars and the singles, meetings and all those things. Not that there's anything wrong with singles meetings, but sometimes it's a meat market with with kind of a spiritual stamp on it that is still a meat market.
Well, I mean, the same thing happens in church. That
Yes,
happens in the singles bars. I mean, it's the same heart, it's the same attitude, it's the same motive that they use. I'm scratching and clawing to find something that works for myself, and it's no different, really.
absolutely. Which is why I've never had a singles group in church, any church that I've pastored. I just feel like, yeah, that's exactly what it ends up being. And but God has a lot to do with this. And let's move ahead a little bit. How did you know moving forward that you were attracted to each other? How did that next step happen?
Yeah, very interesting event had happened. I don't think my daughter had been married yet. That was going to happen.
Yeah.
But I'm well into waiting for God's choice for me, fully not expecting it would take this long. I mean, it's a very common request, right, to be married, and couldn't figure out why is this taking so long. But God was faithful to assure me that the story He was writing for me was for other people also. So fast forward to coming to that place of rest and waiting for who God had for me. I had been involved in a church plant in downtown Decatur, Illinois.
Yeah.
And so I think it was probably about 6 months into that. And we actually met on Saturday nights because we knew that our friends were hungover on Sunday mornings. So
Wow.
And so what eventually happened was Gary had a shift change in his job that moved him to our Saturday night services.
Hmm.
I hadn't met him yet, but God had prompted me one Sunday or Saturday night to go ahead, and I guess it was Sunday nights. I had that wrong, Sunday nights. But he wanted me to go out to dinner with everybody after the service. Generally, I didn't do that because I just didn't have the cash. So, but it was my birthday weekend, and I said, all right, if you want me to go, I'll go. And so after the service, my best friend, who was the pastor, asked me if I was going out with everybody. And I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I am. Save me a seat. And he said, he goes, that's great. I'll be sitting with that motley crew in the back. There was a band standing at the back corner of our church, whom Gary was responsible for. And I learned later that Gary had actually set up a time to talk with Pastor Jeff about a project, a musical project that God had given him, and he was looking forward to our church partnering. So we actually were introduced that first night. You want to talk a little bit about what you were?
Let's do, please.
Yeah, put it on the table.
I'd written a book, had been speaking some, and teaching and encouraging people with what I had found. And in the late '80s, my favorite band was Queensryche.
Yes.
Put out a record, Operation Mindcrime, which is most people consider their pinnacle. It's a concept. It's a story that talks about a junkie. I won't go into the story, but it talks about a junkie. And the live show, the way it played out, it was movie clips that went along, and Jeff Tate, the singer, would interact with the pictures on the screen. And I walked away from that first show that I saw of that tour, and just mesmerized at the art of how they put this thing together. It was not just a rock band, but it was an experience.
Yes.
One day I was at work, I was singing a Queensryche song to myself in a good mood, and as clear as can be, God said, I want you to write a redeeming love story in the way that Queensryche wrote their story. It's called Escaping Forevermore, and we put a band together, and there's some of the stills from the movie. We filmed a silent film with sound cards that told a story that interweaves with live music. So very unique. And we actually came to Nashville because he said, I want you to take this whole thing to Nashville. So we are looking to put a band together, or however this works out. We've looked at a lot of people in the past, and nothing has clicked yet, but we are still sitting on this. This is one of the reasons why we came to Sanctuary, because metal and what we do. So it's a modern day fairy tale. It's the music is probably a mixture of old school Queensryche, Rob Zombie, and The Cure. So that's pretty eclectic, but it works.
So when he was actually presenting this to my pastor, I was hearing him talk about the convictions that he had about God wanting to make the match. And I didn't hear a lot of people talk about this, didn't know a lot of people that committed to wait on the Lord. So my curiosity really sparked when I first met Gary about how he knew God the same way. And that's when I also learned that he had actually written a book that has principles. And the latest version is called God of the Romantic. And he laid out the principles on how you can trust God like this. So he gave a book to my pastor. The next week, I'm babysitting my pastor's kids, and he throws the book in my lap and he says, this sounds like somebody I know, which was me. So I started to read Gary's book, and it was like encountering a ghost. I'm like, this is exactly how I believe God wants to bring his kids together in love and marriage. And so at that point, I can't say that initially I was attracted to Gary. I was very interested in who Gary was and how he had come to the knowledge of God the same as I did. So that's how we initially met. But it would be probably 9 months of a friendship. I joined his project, started out as administrator, ended up as a makeup artist for the project. And that really helped develop just a really solid, pure friendship between the two of us. But there was a moment that you'll learn and read in the book where God did bring Gary to my attention, that he had us in mind for one another.
Yes.
And so I initially said no, because I just didn't see he had the interest in me. But God asked me to look at him again about what I had come to know about him up to that point. So I didn't know everything, but I knew just enough that he was a quality man, a man of daring faith, who loved God, who was on a mission. He was checking so many boxes for me that I couldn't say no to God. And so then God just gave me instructions, let Gary take the lead and let him define the relationship. And it'd be a couple of years before Gary would hear from God himself on that. 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how it started for me.
Yeah. Well, and the project is awesome. So your roots in heavy metal, and by the way, Jeff Tate's drummer has been involved with Sanctuary for a while, and he actually has played in our worship team a couple times. 2 years ago, he played in the worship team at Immortal Fest. And I'm hoping that whenever he's in town, he just moved to Nashville, so
cool
that he becomes part of things. He still plays with Jeff Tate, but great music. And Jeff was such an influence on so many people that when you ask what style of music you play, people would say, well, it sounds kind of like Queensryche. They were the standard. That voice, that, like you said, there was more than just music. It was a story. It was something deeper about it. How exciting to take that concept and to put it into a presentation, which is kind of what you have in mind for the future no better place to find band members and people involved than here at Sanctuary, and I'm sure that the right people will fall in line. Jonas was just Jonas from Sanctuary in Kenya, Africa. There he is, was just sharing how he met his wife, and I remember those days. I think he was in Nashville visiting me right before he found his wife too, and
Wow.
ended up moving from Denmark to Kenya, and the rest is history. They've got a great family, and it's interesting how God brings people together. I want to talk a little bit more about this book because it is truly an amazing love story. Um, so it wasn't just love at first sight. We got together, everything was fine, and we got married, and we've lived happily ever after. There's a little more involved here, and of course you've got more than one book. There's some others that you've written, um, all along the lines of relationships. Um, what would you say sets your story apart from a lot of other stories? Because people say, well, I've read a lot of romance books, read a lot of love stories. Is this just another one of those, or what exactly is it that sets this one apart?
The thing that sticks out to me is that we understand that people fall in love all the time. Uh, Humans are attracted to humans. Um,
Yeah.
we believe that God wants to make the match, that his best way that he wants to match people himself. And we've found out, excuse me, through 7 years now, for us, we got married late in life, but for 7 years, it's, I'm just going to say it, it's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy because when God does it, he prepares people,
Mm.
then he matches people. So it's not just like he throws something on the wall to see what sticks. I mean, he knows what he's doing. And so our desire is for people to have that match. But the first desire is that they get to know the God that makes that match. That's the most important part because he's the prize. It's not the wife or the husband. He's the prize. The wife or the husband is just, as Kim puts it, the cherry on top of the sundae.
Yeah. Right.
It's a gift. It's a
Yeah.
gift. We're still imperfect people. You know, we still make mistakes. We still screw up. But so we're not the center of each other's world. Christ is always the center. And, you know, as he was in singleness, he remains the center. But now, as we relate together, it's easy, it's right, it's good. That's what he wants to do for others. So we want others to have that. We want others to know the God that does that for them first and foremost.
Yeah, and I think you're a great representation of the same thing, Bob, in that our singleness had great quality to it. We understood when Paul said that that it was better to be single because of the undistracted devotion that you get to spend on Christ and Christ alone. Mm-hmm. And there just is no greater companion for any human on the earth than Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And so you and I had talked at a sanctuary one day, and I said our story is so unconventional because it's like the iceberg with all of the ice underneath the water, and then there's just a peak of the ice above the water. And that's how our story reads. There's this quality of relationship with Christ that came before the marriage, and the transformation and the healing that happens in those places is so beneficial to the marriage, which my devotional actually addresses that. It's a devotion a week, and each chapter opens with my intimate relationship with Jesus, and then it closes with how that has benefited my marriage. So I think that's one thing that stands apart. Another thing is that when God speaks, faith is seated in your heart. So when difficulties do come in the marriage, I don't have to wonder if I married the wrong person. I only have to look back at the Lord and what he said and what he revealed about that person.
Yes. Yes.
I'm with the right person. That will never change. And I think that's a big difference too.
Such a great point. Yes. And would you also say that becoming good friends with each other is a pretty important thing?
Oh,
Because
yes.
I'm surprised at when you ask a lot of couples who's your best friend, they don't name each other. Not a good sign.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you think about just in general, you think about a friend, you think about a best friend, and it's probably the most uninhibited relationship that you have because you're not concerned about how you will look, how you're being received, if you're enough. You're just friends. I think it's the best relationship to encounter, and then wait for the revelation of God. What's his plan for that friendship? So we're strong components for go make as many friends as you want and go deep with your friends and wait for God to bring a revelation about who he has for you through those friendships.
That's awesome. So I remember a line from a movie that was in, I think, the late 70s, early 80s, where, and it was kind of made fun of, where the woman looks at the man and says, "You complete me."
Mm.
And everybody kind of made fun of that. And lots of kids used that line in kind of an adverse way and made fun of it. But it is the foundation for marriage. You don't marry someone exactly like you. You marry someone who does complete you.
Mm-hmm. We
So,
know that that our experience was that Christ completes us.
yes,
We complete each other's purpose.
yes.
So
Good.
yeah,
Like
when Gary and I came together, we were both ministering to people to fall in love with Jesus before they fell in love with the one God had for them. So we already were working in our purpose. And so coming together full of Jesus, I believe what was completed was our purpose when we came together.
that is so cool. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you've had some time to interact with other folks and certainly interact with other people that are going through some of the trials and tribulations of relationships as well. And folks, by the way, if you have some comments or questions, please write them down and we'll share them also. But the one constant that I hear you saying is that your relationship with each other is based on your collective relationship with Jesus Christ. Really important. Jonas has a question. Um, are your books available as ebooks? And if not, question for Bob, can you bring some to Denmark in March? So,
Yeah. Yeah, you can actually go to Amazon.com. If you want to go to godoftheromantic.com,
yeah,
all the books will be, they're there on our website. And the links will take you to Amazon. And yes, you will find an ebook for each book that we have available, except for the journals. I noticed that John put up pictures of our journals. Those are not available by ebook, but the actual content books of our stories and teachings are available on ebook.
and by the way, let's have you guys sign a few of these and
Sure.
let's make them available for sale in the Sanctuary store as well.
Excellent. Yeah, that'd be great.
Right, for people to go there and to get the story. But yeah, that would be awesome. And so we've got a few minutes left here, and I wonder if you would just take a little bit of time and encourage the folks that are watching. We have some people that may say, I'm married, I've been married for a while, and that spark seems to be gone in my marriage, or we're just going through so many difficulties, or we may even have people that say, we've been considering divorce because this just doesn't seem to be working. What's your best advice to people that are in that situation?
If they're believers, go to the source. Go back to Christ, because Christ's love never ends for that person, and tap into that. And when you do that, his love will flow through you for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, 100%. The idea of the person that you are married to is so loved by God that he sent his son to die for him. So there is quality and value to that person that you're married to, that it is worth it to go before Jesus, ask him, what are your thoughts towards my husband or my wife? How can I join you in your love for them? Show me how to do that. And a lot of times that takes us through an exercise of forgiveness. And that's the hard thing to do, but it's incredibly worth it to encounter when you remember how much you have been forgiven. When you go to that place of how much you personally have been forgiven, the ability to release forgiveness to that person increases. So I'd encourage that as well.
I love that. Yeah, because that's the bottom line. We have been forgiven so that we can forgive others.
Yes.
That is the bottom line. And there are always those times, as I said to Glenn and Sherry, there is wedded bliss and wedded blisters. We have both. Everybody goes through the same. Yeah. Tina wants to know, what about your wedding? Can you describe your wedding?
Well, Tina's my sister.
Hey,
So-
Tina.
So, so she lives in South Carolina, and she actually drove up to Illinois to attend our wedding. So our wedding was a fairy tale. It was Kim's idea, and I got to add to her fairy tale. So we had Tim Burton-like trees on the stage. We had a big pocket watch that we still hang in our kitchen today, and we had
Wonderland.
yeah, it was Wonderland. We played a 12-minute video that gave a brief story of our history. We
Yeah.
had lanterns on the floor. I wore a big top hat and a purple jacket. There you
Yeah.
go. There's the trees. There's the clock. So
So cool.
the wedding. I remember when I was single, wondering, thinking that here I am teaching this stuff about God ordained marriages and stuff, and I knew that when I got married, whenever that was, that I would want to use the wedding as an evangelistic experience, that others could watch this and see this and know that, hey, this can happen for you too. God is not he's not stingy. He will be willing to do this for anyone who would trust him to do so. So we wanted to create an experience that would be etched in people's mind, and hopefully, I had one friend, and she said, I just went to the coolest wedding that I've ever been to in my life and stuff. And so we succeeded, at least with her.
Mhm.
So, and she's single. So that was the goal, but it was very unique. So it was more like a play. It really was more like a play than it was a traditional wedding.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. And having done hundreds of weddings, I always look forward to those that's a little unique.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you guys, we have run out of time. I have totally enjoyed this, and we'll do this again. I
Yeah.
think it's great for people to know more about you, and of course your story as it unfolds. You're
Yeah.
not done yet.
We're not done yet. No.
We'll talk about and the relationship part of it, all of that. There's some places you can go to learn more. godoftheromance.com, and on Facebook, facebook.com/God of the Romance Presentations.
Bob, it's actually God of the Romantic.
I'm sorry. God of the Romantic
Yep.
Presentations. And folks, you can see that on your screen right now. Visit the website, though, godoftheromantic.com. So, Gary, Kim, thank you. Appreciate you today.
Yeah.
I will see you on Sunday. It's so good to have you here.
We appreciate our time with you guys. A lot of great friendships are building. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, we have loved having you part of Sanctuary, and thank you for letting people get to know you a little more. And we'll do this in front of Sanctuary as
Yes.
we do, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. That would be great.
Great.
Well, folks, don't forget, you are blessed. So go and be a blessing.